Hi, Joe. So I'm really excited because I finally got you out on Zoom to join us on Facebook Live. So, Joe, you and I have been friends for a while, and you're the founder of Health Improvement Solutions. I love what you stand for, and I love all the good work you're doing. Thank you for being here, my friend. I would like you to quickly introduce yourself, tell us all about you, and then we start talking about why measuring matters.
Well, Rajiv, thank you so much for the invitation. It's just great to always talk to you and be with you and learn about the great work you're doing as well. Um, I spent 16 years at Union Pacific Railroad, which is basically one of the big four railroad companies in the U.S. and was fortunate enough to be part of a great team there that addressed the health and fatigue and occupational health issues of the organization, about 35,000 employees. I was there for 16 years, and then I negotiated out some work in 2003. So I was able to stay working with them, which is great because they're a fantastic company. And that allowed me to start Health Improvement Solutions. So now I'm in my 17th year, finally passed a number of years I was at Union Pacific uh, and being on my own. And we focus on four things. I'll just tee it up real quickly. One is evaluation of health programs. Second is assessments in all different areas. Third is behavior change, and then fourth is just around special projects.
Mhm. You know it's amazing, Joe, is that as with this pandemic now at present, right? The world has become surprisingly a smaller place, right? It's as borders have, as borders have dropped and we're all connected virtually. We started to realize that technology plays such a big part in our businesses and the opportunity for us to take advantage of technology, right? And all that it has to offer. And I love some of the stuff that you're doing, especially I use a lot of your assessments and a lot of my clients do as well. And we see a lot of organizations, they they want to create a more vital workforce, right? And everyone talks about EAP programs, but as conscious leaders and as an everyday working person, why what is it about these health assessments, right? For example, that you feel is so vital for organizations?
Well, I think there's four things that it can help with. One is just helping an individual understand their health status. And while we all may have some idea of our health status, when we take more of a detailed view, many times we uncover things that maybe we were subconsciously not aware of.
Yeah.
The second is that when an organization, and I think this is really important, when an organization looks at the health status of their entire organization, and I'm not talking individually, but I'm just saying, what's our rate of stress? What's our rate of obesity? What's our rate of physical inactivity? That it gives them an idea of the health status of their population, which leads to the third point, and that is around program planning. So if we, for example, in the US, if we have an issue with overweight and physical inactivity, and we see that in our aggregate, our collective results from our employees, then that gives us the impetus, the business case to start to address those health issues along with all the other related health issues as well. And then the fourth one is around evaluation, time one versus time two. So whether you do it on individual level or you do it on a collective level, you can look at what we were like in 2019 as an individual or as an entity and how we're doing in 2020 and just have that comparison.
What's interesting, what I heard you say, and I echo this as well, is when organizations understand the value of the health of their teams, how it enables them to impact performance, increase the vitality, right? So a lot of times you'll hear organizations saying, well, yeah, you're responsible for your own health, right? You should know how to take care of yourself. Yet when you take the gross of everyone there and how it impacts your bottom lines, there's a business case to be made. So I love that point that you made, right? What are your findings with organizations, say, before they implement, say, an adequate EAP system and say health assessment? to after, once they've done it? Have you ever seen aha moments? Do you have examples of some aha moments that have popped up?
Well, great question, Rajiv. First off, just establishing the business case. What I often say is when you really look at the cost of poor health for the organization, at least here in the US, I know around the world, we talk about return on investment. And I like to turn that around and say, what's the BOI? What's the burden of illness? In other words, what's the cost of poor health for the organization? And a big aha moment that happens almost every time, Rajiv, almost every time, is that when they do a comprehensive view of what their costs are for poor health, they are shocked that it's that high.
Right.
And what I like to say is, we know it's at least this high. I can give you 3 reasons why we know it's higher. Because you never want to overstate the case. And you want to show them that this is at least what it is. What I also find as an aha moment when you talk to senior managers, especially CEOs, and you ask them this question: do you think there's a connection between personal health and productivity? And they look at you within a half a second and they go, well, of course. And then if you say, do you think it can be measured? That's where the conversation goes all over the place.
Right.
Some of them say, tell me about it. Others are skeptical about it. And then still others say, let me think about that. Let me look at the methodology. Let me look at some of the tools and determine if, basically I believe it type of thing. But I find that in our work, the health and productivity link, and this is always surprising to me, and I mention it whenever I can here on the States, the health and productivity link is more accepted around the world than it is in the US. Because in the US, it's so focused on the healthcare costs part of it. But many of the mature programs and the forward-thinking organizations do see the health and productivity connection, but you still, get some resistance. But I'll just say one other thing real quick, because I think this is really important. When we talk about productivity, we're not talking about always making an employee better for their employer. It really comes down to your personal performance. What you want to get out of life, what you want to get out of your job, how you want to live your daily life. And so a better word, I think, for productivity for the employees is quality of life, because many times you hear about someone was at work and they're so tired when they get home that they can't do anything else. And then they start to hate their job. Well, all those minor decisions we make throughout the day on what we eat and how we spend our energy and what we, get upset about and all of that takes a toll on us by the end of the day. So if we start managing that better, that is that health and productivity connection for me, for Rajiv, for anybody. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm doing it for ABC company, but I'm doing it for myself and my family.
Joe, I love what I'm hearing, and it's absolutely bang on. It's giving the power back to the individual. Yes, the company benefits from the fact that you're more in tune with who you are, but it also brings control back to you. And that's one of the findings that I have when I use these assessments with clients as well. It's one of the biggest aha moments for them is to realize that, wait a second, not every tool only works in one direction. It works in 2 directions. Like you said, it's brilliant. It allows them to understand the quality of life can improve. And I think nothing is more valuable than looking in the mirror, right? So you have various different products. I know you have resilience, we have well-being, you have financial well-being. So there's a lot of these we will talk about, but it gives us an opportunity to look in the mirror as an individual. And it allows you to establish some facts, right, of where you are and where you need to go. And I think this is where, not only organizations benefit, but the individual can also benefit, because you can see how aligned you are to where you want to head, right? So I love what you said earlier, that's absolutely true. In this part of the world as well, there is so much take with organizations, they like to call these kind of programs and tools, they like to address them as soft skills and soft tools, right, Joe? And I've always found that very funny, right? Because it's almost like, so let's establish what is the hard tools, the tools that you find are really important to your business. And yet when you see the impact that your people have on your business, I'm still confused as to why do CEOs and some leaders look at this as something that is optional, right? Because good health and vitality is something which will not only bring, obviously we define productivity, but it also increases engagement. It also increases the goodwill to the business. Yeah. So that's really interesting.
And what I think, that's a great point, Rajiv. And what I think happens, and that's why I mentioned earlier about the BOI, is a sense of urgency. I mean, think about it. If you have a construction company and you're trying to build a road and your supervisor gets hurt, you see that immediately, right? And now that person is out of work. And so that's a direct impact on your business right when that happened. When someone is depressed or someone a low level depression or someone is overweight or they're becoming more physically active or they're stressed about daycare or something happened in the family, it may not be as relevant. It may not be seen today like it is on that injury.
Yes.
And so that's why the business case is so important, because one of the things we want to say to organizations when we identify that cost of poor health is if you choose to do nothing, that's a strategy. And that strategy, I can 100% guarantee, and you can too, Rajiv, that those costs are going to go one way and that's up.
Yes.
Because by choosing to do nothing in terms of cost of poor health, that you are basically saying we're okay with the health of our population deteriorating over time.
Yeah.
And so if we can create that urgency around this is not something you can wait on, that this is something that's impacting your business today, is going to impact it tomorrow, just like that safety incident that happened, that's where we can start to show that health related to business outcome connection.
I want to now take this conversation in a direction of, because we're connected on Facebook and we have individuals watching this as well, and take this conversation now in the direction of, the power to the individuals, which you mentioned and you touched on earlier. In my coaching practice, when I work with, various individuals, one of my findings is, in coaching, we hold the space, we ask the questions, and we allow the client to kind of self-solution and move themselves forward. But assessments and tools like these are such a brilliant tool that they can then also apply into their daily life and understand. I especially like the fact that they come with scores, right? So it was really interesting because I know, for example, we have the purpose one, right? And I work with a lot of conscious leaders on purpose, right? And how does your purpose, not only do you establish your purpose, but how does your purpose then turn and reflect to action? And how does it show up, right? So not just having it, but moving yourself forward. But what I really like is giving them the opportunity to see how close or far they are from a defined purpose, Joe, right? And seeing that there is still room for you to go out there and define it, right? It's not the end. So bringing this back to individuals, when you work with people and they start to use these assessments, and like you said, you give them a better quality of life, you establish various different assessments, and there was reasons for it. So you brought resilience, purpose, and you brought financial well-being. Tell us a little about that. How did you decide, okay, so health is really important organization-wise, but you went down and you customized for individual to individual level with some amazing solutions. And so let's talk about that, because these are all solution-based assessments.
Well, no, that's a great point, Rajiv, and thanks for the question. One of the things that we have to recognize is that we learn from each other. And that's what we've always tried to apply at Health Improvement Solutions, is that the clients that we've worked with over time have made us better by asking us questions. So, for example, we worked early on with a well-known Wellbeing index that's now used internationally, and we were brought in to be part of that team, which was a great project. And so that's just one example where we get exposed to that concept of well-being, and then we humbly try to improve on it, or try to take it to that next phase of how can we develop this for others, and how can we develop a version that we feel comfortable with that's going to be helpful to others. We do a group, we work with a group here locally that does training on purpose, and they were the ones who said that, we sell our purpose training, but then we get asked, how do we evaluate it? And so that was the reason, the impetus behind our purpose survey is, it allows them to then give a score to the individual and collectively to the organization so they can truly see the movement and improvement. That's just two examples of a lot of these have grown out of our clients' uh, requests or questions about this particular area. I'll give you a third one real quick. And that was we were working with a large financial institution, and their focus was brilliant. They were focusing on health and wealth of their employees and their clients, but they didn't have a tool on the wealth side. There's plenty of tools on the health side. And so that's an example where the financial health survey came from. So it's always been a collaboration of working with people like yourself and with others about bringing together an idea and then trying to crystallize it and make it into something that can be usable back to the employee workforce.
And I love what I'm hearing, because most tools are written from an organization top-down point of view. And that's why you and we hit it off right away, and I knew that HIS got it right. Because, you know, the resilient one's another one. We have Nisha also here, and she'll be joining us in a bit. And, you know, we work on mental health and mental well-being. And, you know, there's certain topics that are very difficult to measure. But if you can allow people to just get a sense of where they are, and then offer them some solutions that enable them to move forward, and then you support that with, say, therapy and coaching and programs that then can move, you know, can hold the space while you move yourself forward, then you create a hybrid system that enables people to move, right? One in, you know, the statistics, if I'm not mistaken, Nisha will correct me on this, but it was something as scary as 1 in 3 people, you know, are dealing with, you know, depression or some sort of, you know, mental ailment, which, you know, with the way things are, maybe with the pandemic now, it might have been more, a bit worse than it was in the past. So it makes you wonder, these are the kind of tools now that we all have to create to support each other and to move ourselves forward. Yeah. What are you seeing? I mean, now with your tools out there, I know you have so many other programs and you speak around the world. What are some of the common themes that you are seeing now that you feel we have to pay more attention to?
I think, and this is our newest instrument that we're working on right now, is around the social and physical determinants of health. You know, before it's been all kinds of different labels, but the social determinants seems to be sticking, and I think globally, Rajiv and Nisha, you can tell me if that's true or not, but do people have access to healthy food? Do you feel comfortable exercising in your location where you live or where you work? Is the environment such that you can go out and enjoy yourselves or walk with others? Or the other good example is transportation. Do you have adequate transportation, or is it multimodal, right? When we think of transportation, we always think of cars and buses, but at least in the US, I'm happy to see in some of our more dense cities, we're really expanding that definition of multimodal to include bicycles and scooters and mopeds and things that have been in Europe and other places, you know, for so much longer, but we're finally adapting that. So all of those physical as well as social determinants, do you have a support system? We know that those impact our health. We know that. But how we measure and how we address them and how we plan for them and make them part of our lives is really where I think collectively, Rajiv, we're going as a world, understanding that more comprehensive view of health than what we've had even before. One of my favorite books that I've read a long time ago, and it's a difficult read, but it's worth it. It's called Why Some People Are Healthy and Others Are Not.
Okay.
Why some people are healthy and others are not. And it identifies 16 determinants of health. And it was kind of my first exposure. I didn't call it that back then, nor did the author, but it was my first exposure to all these other factors that we know influence our health and what we can do about them.
You know, it's I mean, brilliant. What I'm hearing is literally that's the word. You're absolutely right. Because if you can measure, you know, there's the inner circle of things that are directly connected to you that you would attribute to probably your happiness, and then you go to the outer circles. So it's absolutely vital to start looking at that, and as a community, look at how you can measure that. Brilliant, Joe. That's really great to hear. I'm going to now also invite some of the other panelists that we have in Zoom to come online, and we can take this as a group discussion because I know there are some great topics. So I don't know, Nisha, Nitin, if you guys are on, you can turn on your cameras and you can join the conversation. We had this discussion the other day, and we were talking about mental health and bringing it back to mental health. Um, and it was really interesting to see the available tools that are there right now. But at the same time, you know, a lot of people have to understand that when you have instruments out there, including the HIS ones we all use, that they are all supplementary to you doing the work. Hi guys, how you guys doing? So, I'm just gonna quickly finish up this point and then invite you guys in. So, Joe, coming back to exactly what you said is these are all supplementary to what you're doing in your life, and as you adapt and start to make conscious choices, can things change, right? Can things transform? So, in mental health, and I invite now, we have Nitin, who's the founder of iCharts. Joe, so I introduced you to Nitin. And we also have Nisha there, who's the founder of Mind Wellness. You guys, in the mental health space, I know there is a lot of practices in place that help measure and instruments that help you look at how you're doing. But give us your feedback on how, how are they used to support this movement into mental well-being? Because a lot of times, a lot of the tools, and you can tell me more about this, does it have a positive effect on the person who's receiving it? Does it make them, do they feel motivated and, okay, I got this score now? Or is it more on the case of, well, this is the problem you've been diagnosed with and now you got it? You guys got my question? Is a tool kind of pushing you down? And Joe, you understand where I'm going with this. Nathan, you want to jump in on this?
So, okay. So the thing is with mental health, the assessments are a bit trickier. And the reason why they're a bit trickier is because a lot of times people take it too personally. And that can make a bad situation worse. So, and that's actually been the challenge that we are facing with assessments for mental health. That when you're creating an assessment, or even the standard scales that are there, for example, most of the assessments will eventually try to label you into one of the categories that you fall into. Now you can do a personality profiling, you can do a mental health assessment, you could do a depression inventory or an anxiety inventory, but eventually it's all about being able to label people into different categories, right? And with mental health, that labeling can become really tricky. For example, when I take cases right now, I actually get clients who come and tell me, I have an anxiety disorder. And then you ask them, all right, what happens? And they're like, no, it's because I have an anxiety disorder. So it's almost like there's nothing wrong with me. The anxiety disorder is an entity in itself.
Okay.
Right? Now, and that's where I think physical assessments, I don't, when we're doing assessments which are more physical, personally speaking, I see the risks involved are far lesser. People take it more as an assessment of, all right, what can I do to improve?
Sure.
With mental health, they take it like a personal, it's like a personal label. This is who I am, and not as this is where I am and where I can move from here.
So Nitin, can I say something? This is where Joe got it right. If you saw his resilience assessment, what I loved about it, it was inspiring, motivating, empowering, and it takes you from the space of here's where you seem to be in the range, and this is some things proactively you can do. So it doesn't label you in a space where you then feel curbed by you're not diagnosed. This is the good thing. And Joe, you did that consciously, right? That the whole idea was to make sure that you can empower. Can you tell us a little more about the resilience?
Well, I need to give credit to Dr. Richard Davidson at Duke Medical Center, who came up with the tool, and then we worked with him on the scoring and the messaging. And since then, we've added to the question set as well. He was just fantastic to work with and such a leader in this space, but was willing to listen to us and work with us and put up with our suggestions. And I think collectively, it goes back to that point earlier. Collectively, humbly, I think we came up with a better tool, and a tool that moved into the next phase. Can I say something though on the comment? And I apologize on the name, but I totally understand your point. I'll just give one example where it might be useful to have those categories. We have something called the purpose mindset profile, and the idea behind it is, and I'm not trying to sell it, I just want to give an example. The idea behind it is that we all communicate and we all process information differently. But if I know that you are a thinker doer and that Nisha is a reactive uh, 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 doer, then once I understand that, I may communicate with both of you differently and hopefully more effectively. And what this instrument shows is that you have what we call a predominant process, but you also have a little bit of all of them. So you're never one absolute and nothing else. But the idea is that if I know how you process information, how you choose to communicate, that's going to help me better communicate with you. One of the things we often say is that Rajiv communicates the way he does. I communicate the way I do. Nisha communicates the way subconsciously because we think that's the best way to communicate. That's why we do it. But once we get input into, not everybody communicates like I do, but I may need to change my message slightly for Rajiv to better understand me. Once I know that, because of that label, I can make that adjustment. It's not going to be done by Friday. It's going to take time, but at least makes me more conscious of it. But that's not to criticize your point. I just wanted to make a statement around how it can be useful in certain situations to have that, understand those labels of people and not define them by them, but use them as a tool.
Okay. So actually, I completely agree. And in fact, the way we recommend the use of these tests, and that's where the difference is. When, let's say, an organization uses it, I'm trying to understand someone else so that I can adjust my style of working according to them. These are all very useful. So even, for example, the depression inventory or the anxiety inventory, if I'm a therapist who's going to work with a client, then the inventory may give me a starting point to begin with. So to that extent, those tests can be very useful. When I'm talking about the challenge is more when we give it to the individual, because when the individual goes through it, then they are not looking at it as how do I. So if I'm going through a test for myself, then I don't see it as how I need to communicate with Nisha or with Raji or with you. I look at it as this is who I am, and now people have to adjust so that they can communicate with me to this format. And that is where it becomes tricky. So that's why when you are working with groups and when you are working with corporates, from an organization point of view, I think it's very, very useful to have these inventories. Your policies can be designed around that, your incentives can be designed around that. There's a lot that can be done around that. But at a personal level, when as an individual I'm going through a test, especially mental health tests, then the chances that I will end up labeling myself is probably higher. And that's where the difference is actually with mental health tests.
So Nitin,
So can I?
I'm going to, sorry, Nisha, I'm going to just quickly interrupt because I think we're going to say bye to the Facebook users. But before we say bye to them real quick, I'm going to throw 3 things that we can all learn from just the conversation we've had. And we're going to continue this conversation because I know it's going in the right direction. But 3 things that's really important for us to understand is when you measure something, you allow yourself to move yourself forward because you have something you can start with. So if you get one thing out of this is that there are tools and instruments out there that enable you as an individual to take control back. So that's one of the brilliance. And Joe, Nitin, even Nisha, all of you are working with tools and delivering them, myself as well. And we've seen transformations occur because people have taken this on. The second thing is, for organizations, it's not only to think about things from a space of soft or hard, it's to understand that if you can help your team members experience life and experience a better quality of life, then it's a no-brainer. It's something that needs to be done now, right? And if we have to establish ROI for this, if you look hard enough, or even actually, like Joe said, if you don't have to look that hard or that far, you will see a real business case for it, right? On the other side of the table, for people experiencing, mental health concerns or looking to improve well-being overall. The good news now is there's ways that we can even measure that, right? So it's not a lost cause or it's not fluffy. There's actually tools out there that can help you measure. So from all of us here, we're really excited. Reach out to any one of us. Our details will be available below. All right. And we look forward to hearing your questions, anything that you want to know more about assessments and how we can help you. All four of us would love to answer some of those questions. So from me and everyone here, a quick see you guys later. All right. Okay, guys. So I think we can continue.